Good afternoon, and just first off, thank you for joining us. I'm Conrad Smith with AIM Transportation Solutions, and joining me today is our expert host, AIM Director of Safety, Amanda Austin-DeMartinis. Operation Safe Driver Week, the reason we're all here this afternoon, begins July 12th, so this Sunday actually. And unlike events that focus primarily on vehicle or equipment inspections, this initiative really puts the spotlight on driver behavior. So with that, law enforcement officers across North America will be out in full force watching for those unsafe driving habits that can contribute to crashes, making this an ideal time to reinforce safe driving practices throughout your organization. Now, with that being said, today's webinar will cover the behaviors officers will be focusing on, why those violations matter beyond a roadside stop, and the steps you can take now to prepare drivers for the event and beyond. Now, this webinar is really just a small part of one of AIM's primary missions, which is helping fleets improve safety and reduce operational risk. You know, whether it's through dedicated contract carriage, full service truck leasing, or comprehensive maintenance programs, our goal is really just to help customers keep their operations running safely, efficiently, and with fewer disruptions. And just in case you're unfamiliar with AIM, I'll just mention real quick that one of the main things that sets us apart is that we are a family-owned and operated business, and we truly operate like one. We're also large enough to deliver the resources and capabilities you'd expect from a big corporate provider, while at the same time delivering the personalized service and attention you'd expect from a family business like ours. So if you'd like to, if you'd like to learn more about AIM and our services, you can shoot me an email afterward, and I'd be more than happy to continue the conversation. But for now, we'll go ahead and transition to the topic at hand. But real quick, before I turn things over to Amanda, I just want to say that if you have questions, feel free to ask them at any time. But we will wait until the end of the presentation to answer them, just to keep everything on schedule. So with that, Amanda, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Conrad. So just kind of to reiterate what Conrad just said, the Operation Safe Driver, it runs from July 12th to July 18th next week. This is an initiative that started back in 2007. Unlike CVSA Road Check, International Road Check, and Brake Safety Week, this is very specifically centered around the driver and driver behavior. And it's also not just for commercial vehicles. This can impact regular traffic out on the road, just like all of us. So those are some important things. This is something that happens every year. It's right around the first or second week of July every year. So it's something that you can kind of come to expect. And they usually have annual themes. So like Conrad said, this year is kind of mostly about distracted driving, reckless, careless, dangerous driving habits. And previous years have focused on other things. So let's see here. Today's objectives. The objective is to leave here today understanding what Operation Safe Driver Week is, know what officers will be looking for, and get an idea of some useful information on how to coach drivers and to be ready for this enforcement effort, but also coaching them throughout the year to make sure that they understand what's expected, so that this isn't something new. Having a coaching platform already in line so that your drivers are doing these things every day, that's the best thing you can do at the end of the day to make sure that when there is extra enforcement going on, that your drivers are ready for it. So we're going to give you some initiatives to reinforce safe driving habits and reduce violations and crash risk, which those are that's where the money is. That is where our fleets, right now we're living in a world where everybody kind of sues for everything. That's the harsh reality. So, being prepared to handle those situations when they do occur, unfortunately, and preventing behavior that leads to crashes, that is the most critical thing we can do for our drivers. Operation Safe Driver Week. Like I said, it's an annual CVSA enforcement initiative. It affects commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles, North America wide. It does affect Mexico and Canada, but I do know it's enforced a little bit more in North America than it is in Canada and Mexico. And it is focused on education as well as enforcement. Unlike some other initiatives statewide or throughout the entire U.S., it is specifically to educate as well as enforce, whereas a lot of the other ones like Road Check and Brake Safety Week are much more of enforcement. It's a partnership between CVSA, FMCSA, and state agencies and law enforcement. So whereas there's a lot of initiatives that may only be state specific or group specific, this is everybody all at once. So the reason this matters is because drivers contribute to 94% of crashes annually. In 2025, 36,640 U.S. traffic fatalities involved drivers and motor vehicles. Thousands of roadside contacts are made every year. What this means is, there's thousands of roadside checks, drivers getting stopped for DOT inspections, drivers being stopped for, routine, hey, this guy was swerving, I'm going to pull him over, I'm going to do a check. So all these initiatives through the year, all these contacts through the year, all go into what drives Operation Safe Driver Week. And safety improves when drivers know enforcement is occurring. Again, this goes back to, officers being out there actually making contact and us reinstilling in our drivers what we're watching and what we're seeing them do. These are our 2025 results. This is throughout the entire U.S. Included 8,739 vehicles being stopped, 2,504 citations being issued, and 3,575 warnings. This year's focus, unsafe driving behaviors. Again, everything is focused on human behavior and not so much on the factors like truck safety when it comes to a mechanical standpoint. That being said, officers will be watching for speeding, following too closely, distracted driving, improper lane changes, failure to wear seatbelts, failure to obey traffic control devices, aggressive driving habits, improper turns, failure to yield, and using handheld devices. Why fleets should care. So this, if you have, whether it's an integrated system like AIM uses our trucks in an integrated fashion where we have drivers of our own, and then we also have the leasing side where we lease to fleets that they've got their own drivers, their own systems, their own training platforms. The reason this is so critical is that if your drivers get stopped, if they get cited, if they're involved in any kind of interaction with law enforcement or DOT, it's going to affect your CSA in either a positive or a negative way. Those CSA points also end up impacting whether you get stopped more often. That's called your ISS score. And ISS, it's a little bit more on the maintenance side, but what that means is if you have a DOT number that has had regular citations and they run your DOT number and they see that you've had regular citations, you're more likely to be stopped for routine inspections and DOT stops. So pretty much the more often you have your drivers are having interactions that are negative, the more often they're going to have more interactions that are negative. The best thing for your fleet is to have positive interactions where they're, clean inspections, no citations, maybe they get stopped and everything is is well and good. They're not on their phone, they're not speeding, they're not following too close, and that they have a positive that has a positive impact on your CSA and your ISS score. This all leads to increased insurance costs because CSA directly influences how your insurance is rated. Your crash liability, like we said earlier, right now, everybody's suing everybody. The nuclear verdicts are pretty outrageous and can sink a company very fast. It's something very critical that we should all be educating ourselves about. Lost productivity, driver downtime, and customer confidence. I mean, those kind of speak for themselves. If your drivers are getting stopped regularly or have poor driving habits, you're going to have the customer complaints. You're going to have drivers that are either on the side of the road because they've been put out of service, or maybe they're being held up for some other reason. Coaching drivers before the event. So AIM specifically with our drivers, we have a lot of coaching that we do. We have weekly coaching, we have monthly coaching, we have standards that we hold our drivers to where if they don't perform at a certain level, they're regularly talking to our safety team and learning about improving their driving habits. That is a really critical part of encouraging good driving habits, is do it all the time, do it throughout the year. You don't want to wait until Safe Driver Week, for example, to suddenly push for better behaviors, because realistically, if they aren't doing it year round, they're very unlikely to suddenly learn how to do it just for Safe Driver Week. Some specific examples that correlate with this year's focus is leave extra following distance, slow down in work zones, putting phones away, wearing seatbelts, use signals, and avoid unnecessary lane changes. And we're going to delve into these just a little bit deeper in the coming slides. So of course, speeding remains one of the biggest risks. Pressure from delivery schedules, speed limit changes quickly, speeding increases stopping distance, and minor speeding often leads to inspections. The pressure from delivery schedules, this is something I feel is definitely a driver decision, and that's where the human factor comes in. So just because they might have a tight schedule doesn't mean that speeding is necessarily a good option. So that's where coaching comes in, where you teach your drivers that choosing to go faster is not going to ultimately make their day go by faster. It's not going to get them to the delivery location quicker. If you do some basic math on speed limit differences and the rate of speed that a driver is traveling, it doesn't make any significant difference when it comes to how much time they can actually save. Speed limits changing quickly, especially going into either, city areas, residential areas. That's where we see a lot of targeted enforcement. So talking to your drivers ahead of time about what to expect with that is very critical. Speeding increasing stopping distance. This goes hand in hand with following distance. So if your drivers are going a little bit faster than they maybe should, and they're maybe following a little too closely, at that point, they're not going to be able to stop if the vehicle in front of them comes to a stop. Minor speeding often leads to inspections. So this is important because a lot of drivers are in the mindset of, well, I was only going 4 or 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. That's generally okay. And where it might not lead to a traffic ticket or a citation, technically anything above the posted speed limit is breaking the law. Reinstilling in your drivers that the choice to go over the speed limit, over the posted speed limit, is still breaking the law will help them understand that if they get stopped for maybe going 37 in a 35, it's because 35 is in fact the law. Distracted driving. So this one is definitely a hot topic, especially in with the current driving conditions out on the road. I mean, I think it's close to impossible to drive down the road and not see somebody with a cell phone in their hands. You know, you come to a traffic light, everybody's pretty much reaching for their phone. They're changing music. They're you know, seeing if anybody's texted them or something like that. Um, there are some slightly more relaxed laws when it comes to being in a passenger vehicle. However, in a CMV, it is federal law that the cell phone has to be put away. The important thing with this is even if your drivers are at a traffic light or a stop sign, or you know, it's some other situation, maybe they're stopped in traffic because of construction, that is still considered on the road and they can still be cited for it. Unfortunately, we've seen situations where our drivers have been stopped and even cited where they're at a traffic light, they're at a dead stop, they're not moving their truck, and they still get cited because they have their cell phone in their hand. So it is very, very critical to stress hands-free devices, such as Bluetooth, where it's just the one touch call. That's really the only thing that's considered safe and legal at this point, is to have a headset that is correct for CMV use. Dispatch devices. So if you're using ELD platforms to send messages, it's important to stress to your drivers to not use them while they're driving. Most of them these days, they come already kind of hardwired to turn off while the vehicle is moving. But if for any reason you have a device that doesn't turn off while driving, make sure your drivers understand that that's basically the same as using a cell phone. Eating, paperwork, and GPS programming. GPS programming, that's much like the cell phones and dispatch devices. Your drivers need to understand that if they need to adjust their GPS location, they should do it at a safe place like a parking lot, a truck stop, a rest area, someplace where they're off the road and they're not among the traveling public. Following distance. So following distance is broken down into three primary categories, and that's perception time, reaction time, and actual physical stopping distance or braking distance. The idea of this is the perception time is how long it takes your brain to recognize that there is a hazard in front of you that is going to require some kind of action on your part. So there's a certain amount of time that takes, and the reaction time itself is the time it takes your brain to tell your body to physically do something, and then your body moves. So you see the hazard, you know the hazard is there. Your brain tells your foot, hit the brake. At that point, if you're a truck driver, you've already traveled some distance and you are just now getting on the brake. And then you have the stopping distance itself. And obviously, you know, AIM, our headquarters is in Northeast Ohio, or north, you know, mostly east, but some north. We deal with a lot of snow. We deal with a lot of rain. There's all kinds of, this is, you know, we have all kinds of weather that changes constantly. You have to make sure that your drivers understand what to expect with weather conditions. Rain, snow, wet leaves, all of those things are going to affect whether you can stop safely. The 7-second rule, this is based off a platform of 10 seconds per 10 feet, or I'm sorry, 1 second per 10 feet of vehicle. So if you've got, you know, the standard like a day cab and a 48-foot trailer, you're looking at approximately 60 feet. Some vehicles obviously are a little bigger, so that's going to correlate to a larger stopping distance. But the 7 seconds is 1 second per 10 feet of vehicle plus 1 second for if you're going over 40 miles per hour. teaching defensive driving. I know AIM, for our integrated drivers, we utilize the Smith system. There are a number of really, really great defensive driving programs out there. I mean, you could, we can supply resources. Sometimes your insurance companies actually are a good place to get information about defensive driving courses or just information packets that you can supply to your drivers. There's lots of information online. There's so many different ways you can teach your drivers to be aware of what's going on around their vehicle. So this one, this really highlights the be aware, keep your distance, control your speed, plan ahead, and make safe choices. A lot of these, they're all kind of focused on the same thing of making sure you're actually looking around, making sure that you're aware of the vehicles around you, that you're acknowledging them, that they see you as well, and that you're controlling your vehicle in a professional fashion. Teaching your drivers to share the road. This one is tricky because we all know cars cut trucks off a lot. They do sometimes unpredictable things. They'll race around you. And it's as a commercial driver, it's very stressful dealing with these situations, especially in like city driving, where it's happening a lot. The best thing you can teach your drivers is in those situations to stay in the right lane, stay in their own lane, do not make unnecessary lane changes, and to just understand that, the car drivers, they're more likely traveling faster than a truck. Let them get away from the truck. So what we teach our drivers, somebody cuts you off, just let off the fuel a little bit. That's the best thing that they can do is just let off the fuel, let the car get away from you. You're automatically slowing down a little bit. Now you've grown that distance, so you've got your following distance that you need, and you can continue on down the road. But encouraging them to not get too frustrated, not get in too much of a hurry, allow that extra time so that when those situations do happen, that they're not feeling like they're going to miss a delivery because of slowing down because of traffic. Driver mindset. Instead of asking, can I get away with this? Ask, would I do this with a patrol car behind me? Not just if a patrol car is behind me, but maybe a safety manager, maybe somebody else watching, maybe somebody's in the car next to you that is now not gonna think highly of drivers anymore. Making your drivers aware of the fact that people are in fact watching them. They're the big thing on the road, and everybody is watching. Everybody is seeing what they're doing. They're up, at a higher level where, frankly, it's very, very easy to see what drivers are doing all the time. It's not just being watched by police. They need to be in the mindset of they are a professional. They're doing this for a living. They're not just relaxing, listening to their favorite music artist strolling down the road in their vehicle. They're a professional and should behave as such. We recommend having conversations with your drivers about fatigue. Ensure drivers have plenty of sleep, hydration, breaks, and are fit for duty. The sleep, that's kind of hard to make sure that, it's like outside of keeping with the hours of service, it's very hard to dictate what kind of sleep your drivers are getting. But having a good line of communication where if they are experiencing some fatigue, that they would reach out and explain that and possibly take an extra break so that they can, get a little rest, maybe get out of the truck and see if they feel better. Whatever your drivers need, we strongly recommend having those open lines of communication so that they can reach out if they need to. Preparing your fleet for Operation Safe Driver Week, have safety meetings. So bring your drivers in and actually talk to them in person where they're not in a truck. So if you're having a conversation with a driver, maybe say you call them during their day and you say, hey, next week is Operation Safe Driver. We need you to make sure that you're not doing things that are going to get you pulled over. At any given moment in a truck, a driver is focusing on everything that is going on around them. They're focusing on the traffic, the road, whether they're going to make it to their stop. They might be focusing on even other things outside of what's going on with their actual job. And if you present them with information while they're driving, understand that that's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is the vehicle that they're driving. And so you don't want to either become an additional distraction by talking to them about Safe Driver Week or any other, safety related subject you want to bring up. But you also don't want to expect them to remember those things if they're focused entirely on controlling the vehicle. That goes along the lines of the driver communication, making sure you've got a good level of communication where you can either sit down maybe in an office setting or in a safety meeting setting and actually have good communication with your drivers. Give them a platform where they can ask questions and learn about the safety policies you have, the what's expected by CVSA and FMCSA. That's the best thing that you can arm your drivers with is the knowledge of what is expected of them. That and reviewing recent events. If a situation happens where your driver is stopped and cited, reviewing that event is very critical for them to know going forward why that happened. There are situations where drivers may actually not understand why they were cited. So making sure that they have that information is really helpful. Maybe they were not comfortable talking to a DOT officer or an enforcement officer about why they were cited. So explaining that to them, what the citation is regarding is going to be really helpful for them. Dispatcher's role, unrealistic schedules, communication expectations, pressure to speed, and proper trip planning. When it comes to communication expectations, like I said before, if they have a communication device in the truck that is going to become a distraction, that's something that you might want to look into a way that you can do that isn't a distraction. Using most common ELDs, they don't allow any kind of communication while driving that isn't about hours of service. Maybe it'll beep if somebody's going to go over their hours or something like that, but there isn't situations where drivers are actively using it for communication while driving. That's the best thing you can do. Never ever send communication through a text message expecting your driver to look at it. This is really critical because there are also the situations where you send a text, hey, it came in from my dispatcher, I have to look at it. And now they're looking at a text message while driving just because they feel that they're expected to. So you don't want to present those expectations to drivers where they're going to kind of fall into the trap of, looking at their phone or being distracted because they feel like they have to. The manager's role during enforcement week. Regularly check in with your drivers, share reminders in any way you can, whether it's maybe posting safety memos or maybe sending out a morning briefing so that everybody sees it on their way in. Support drivers after inspection. So if your drivers get stopped for any reason and they have a positive inspection, maybe share it with the other drivers as well to encourage other drivers to make good choices. Avoid creating unnecessary schedule pressure and celebrate safe behavior. If your drivers get stopped, make sure they understand to remain calm, be respectful, provide documents, don't argue roadside, report citations immediately, and document inspection results. Most of the time, if for any reason they don't know what paperwork they need, as long as they're stopped in a safe location, an officer will let them call either their safety professional or a supervisor to kind of figure out what they need. You know, if for example, if a driver gets stopped and they don't know where their insurance is, have them say something to the officer right then, hey, let me call somebody, instead of waiting until they've received a citation and then you have to provide proof of the insurance after the fact. We've some of our integrated drivers, we've seen this happen where, you know, they don't realize that, you know, they're stopped, they're in a safe location, they can call somebody and ask for help while they're sitting there. You know, they get a little worked up and they don't want to say something to the police officer that they shouldn't, so then they don't end up asking for help and then they end up getting cited. That's going to reflect on not only the driver, but also on the CSI score. So it's really critical that they know that they can call for help. After next week is over, it is really, really important to review the violations that you may have received. Hopefully none, obviously. But if you do, it's important to review those, review the near misses, review the coaching opportunities, positive performance, and lessons learned. So the coaching opportunities is really the heavy hitter here. If you don't already have active coaching set up for your drivers, this is a perfect time to use this as a platform for going forward. Figure out what you need to be coaching more on. Maybe it's speeding, maybe following distance, you know, maybe just general safety performance. But there's a lot of coaching platforms out there that you can utilize for either weekly or monthly coaching to help your drivers understand what's expected and understand what the laws are. So AIM, we partner with Luma and Netrodyne. Luma is a learning platform that we utilize. It is absolutely wonderful for personalized training for our drivers, as well as making sure that they understand, you know, like disciplinary stuff, as well as coaching materials. So we can use it universally for getting information out to our drivers and making sure that they understand what is expected of them. There's a lot of learning platforms out there that you can utilize, that you can use year-round to make sure that your drivers understand the laws. Much like that, we utilize Netrodyne as our telematics. Telematics are the absolute best thing that you can use to monitor what's going on with your drivers. It's going to monitor your speed, following distance, your brake applications. Having that information in hand where you can actually see what your drivers are doing and then coach them on that behavior, that's the best thing that you can do. Operation Safe Driver Week should reinforce, not replace, your year-round safety program. So like I was saying, you know, the best thing that you can do is make sure that you have a safety program that you're utilizing year-round, that your drivers know what's expected, they know what the company policies are, they know what the laws are, and they know what to expect roadside. And consistency matters more than 1 week of preparation. The resources that we gathered some information from were CVSA, FMCSA, our company safety department, driver coaching resources, and fleet telematics. Like I said, we utilize Netrodyne primarily for fleet telematics. It's a really, really great system. If you have a fleet and you don't have cameras in your trucks, I highly recommend looking into some kind of platform similar and get cameras in your trucks. You know, whether you want them driver facing or not, you can always, there's so many out there that you can have only facing out. that you can at least analyze what's going on and protect yourself. It protects the company if for any reason something happens where, maybe something is affected by someone in the motoring public causing a collision. You can protect your fleet with the videos that these newer systems, there's Samsara and Netrodyne. Both are really, really great camera systems that I highly recommend. And then driver coaching resources. Like I said, getting a learning system in place for your drivers where they're doing active learning throughout the year is the absolute best way that you can make sure that they're completely prepared for their workday every day, whether it be to educate them about your own company policies and what you expect them to do, or whether it's to educate them about the laws out there. It's the absolute best thing that you can do is make sure that they actually have access to the education they need. And key takeaways: coach before enforcement, reinforce safe habits, remove schedule pressure, communicate expectations, and use enforcement week as a learning opportunity, not just enforcement. Conrad, I'm going to turn it back over to you and see what questions we have.
Yeah, no, thank you, Amanda. That was awesome. I think if I had one big takeaway, it's that, the best fleets don't prepare for just 1 week of enforcement. They use it just as another opportunity to strengthen the driving habits that protect their people and their business. So again, really great stuff. I appreciate you putting this together. And we'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. Anyone can submit a question using the chat function. We'll actually begin with a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. So let's go ahead and dive into the first one. So the first one was, what are the most overlooked driver behaviors, ones not as obvious, such as speeding or phone usage, that lead to violations?
So something I was thinking about when I saw these questions is I recently went to a seminar that one of the topics was what happens when you've got a driver that you're expecting not to be distracted, or somebody, say a tow motor or a forklift operator, or other heavy machine operator, and maybe you're trying to prevent injuries or prevent distractions. One of the biggest things to understand is that all these people out here, they're essentially wearing two hats. So what that means is, yeah, they're at work, they're doing their job. Maybe they're driving the truck or operating the forklift, or whatever the case may be with what they're doing. They could be, one of us in an office. You're doing your job, but you also have the constant, maybe you've got a kid that's sick at home. Maybe your spouse is frustrated with you. Maybe your car has been making a funny ticking noise and it's on the back of your mind. The idea that you come in the door for work or step into the truck and leave all that behind is not realistic. The reality is, especially with the level of communication we have with everyone outside of our job, it's not like the old days where, dad goes to work and he's going to find out what went wrong when he gets home from work. Now it's like with cell phones and all the other means of communication, you can't really separate from what's going on outside of work when you're at work. So you're literally always in some level of distraction based on what you've got going on at home. So, and that kind of goes with, having a good line of communication with your drivers. If they've got something going on, being understanding, maybe being an ear for them, so that they can handle that distraction and still be able to do their job to the best of their ability and safely, so that they can get home and handle those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point there. I mean, it's so easy to overlook all those variables that are, beyond the job. So, yeah, great point there. So the moving on to the second question, what's the best way to coach experienced drivers without making them feel like they're being micromanaged?
So we've got more than a few drivers, with the AIM fleet that you get the lines of, "Oh, I've been doing this for 30 years." And, that might be the case. And there's a lot to be said for somebody who has driven for 30 years and maybe they haven't had citations, maybe they haven't had accidents. That's awesome. And that's a really important thing to say, yeah, you've done great for this amount of time. However, traffic is changing. What's going on the road is changing. And with that, they have to adapt with it. And so instead of telling them that their driving habits are necessarily wrong, maybe lean more toward helping them understand that traffic has just changed. Like I said, everybody's on their cell phone, everybody's distracted, they're listening to music, they're driving fast, it's just changed a lot. And unfortunately, because of that, driving habits have to change with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So the final question that we had was Operation Safe Driver Week aside, what are some practical ways or initiatives to improve driver safety throughout the year?
So like I've been kind of touching on is utilizing some telematics, whatever you can have in your trucks, to monitor the driving habits and coach on those driving habits, but also, the follow-up from that, having a coaching platform and just having those like regular safety meetings where your drivers have a chance to actually talk about what's going on, talk about the things they're seeing, maybe present problems that they need solutions to. That's really the most important thing, is just to have that regular, honest, open communication and the coaching where you're offering positive change instead of just telling them, "Hey, you did this thing, it was bad, now you're in trouble." It's like identifying the behavior ahead of time, saying, "Hey, maybe if we make a small change here, this will prevent something down the road." That's really the most critical thing that you can do for your drivers.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Amanda, you must have been pretty darn thorough because no other questions came through. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap things up a little early. Just want to say thank you again for joining us today. Everyone who registered will receive a follow-up email containing a link to today's recording, along with additional resources to help you prepare your drivers for Operation Safe Driver Week. I'm looking to get that out tomorrow. But if you have any questions after today's session, Amanda's contact information will be included in that email. And if you'd like to discuss ways AIM can help support your fleet through services like full service leasing, rentals, maintenance, dedicated contract carriage, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to have a conversation. And if you want to get a free transportation analysis, you can scan that QR code there on the screen, or just reply to tomorrow's email, and we'll get you hooked up. So again, thank you for joining us. And Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Conrad.